live. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Flow here today. You will notice that we did not have a This Week in Webflow video. That's okay. We might change how we're experimenting with some of that, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about my shifting roles and responsibilities just kind of professionally, where this stream is headed, kind of what we're going to be doing in the community next. We're not going to talk too much. Obviously, Colleen is a little under the weather today, so shout out to Colleen, who's at home kind of resting today. Our next episode will be on the 3rd, so this is our last episode for the year. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us. What's up? I saw Aviva's in the house. We got Aiva backstage. Hello, Aiva. Content Nest. Aviv says, I know the moment I join in, my daughter will come running in, and that will be the end of it. So he did jump in for a second. If you're interested, you can jump in. There's a pinned comment in the chat. You can jump in the back in the video backstage here, and we'll have some audience engagement as we go through this conversation. What's up, Michael Collins? Hello, Marseille in the house. Brandon Tancott, what's up? Carrie Cravers here. Hello, Kevin, and everybody else who joins us as we go. So let's talk a little bit about some changes in my world. I have just accepted a new position with a company called Wire Networks. This is going to be something totally out of my traditional wheelhouse. I'm moving into the crypto world. I know this is like a trendy topic right now. It's all over the news. I've actually been working, consulting with crypto clients since 2015. This is an interesting opportunity that presented itself to me kind of out of the blue. I had been working with this development team on another project that I will also be talking a little bit about here on this show. And this opportunity to kind of go in a new direction with them, super aligns with a lot of things I'm doing, kind of presented itself. And I thought I would take this opportunity to just try something new, right? Like, I think I'm good at the things I do. This is a totally emerging market in a very interesting space, so I would like to go and try my hands at that. And that will mean that I'll be spending a little bit more time away from some of the stuff I was doing in the past. And what I found is that the This Week in Webflow videos were kind of eating into my weekend time because I was producing those on Sunday. So I might just change the timing. I'm not sure I'm going to go hard into the Webflow space only on This Week in Webflow. We're going to talk about why some of that might change as we go forward. But I think, like, the thing that the thread that unites all of us, and the reason State of Flow was exciting for me was because we were talking about like what it means to be a digital creator in a modern world. And the pivot we made for that conference, that event, was not just to be like purely Webflow focused, although most of us were Webflow focused, was just to understand what it means to be a creator in this modern world and how to survive and thrive in the space. I have not had a job in like 15 years, a real quote unquote job. Even though I was at FinSuite and that was technically a job, it was doing things that I loved, working in a space that I loved. It was kind of a dream job, if you will. So if you're going to have a job, that's the type of job to have. But it also got to a point where it started feeling more like a job, which is where I'm headed into this other direction, which is where I want to head, which is where I want to build. I want to make things. And I think that's the thread that unites all of us. And so I would like to expand the conversation that we have outside of just the bubble of Webflow. I think Webflow will be a big part of what we do moving forward because it's going to be the tool we continue to use to build these experiences on the internet. But I would also just like to be able to shift conversation and in moments like this, talk about some other stuff. Maybe you all have things you want to talk about that are outside of the world of Webflow. I mean, the growth streams were all about growth and sales. And there was a reason we didn't, with the growth streams, dive into like teaching about Webflow. It's because we wanted to help people grow their business. And I still have that inside of me where my goals, the things that I'm aligning towards in the future, are all about helping other people kind of connect, build their presence digitally, build their communities, scale their agencies. And I think I'm kind of uniquely positioned to do that. And some of the things we're talking about, some of the stuff we're going to be rolling out over the next few months is going to align with that. So I wanted to talk about some of that. Okay, so I have a little outline here. Let's see, a new job, assignment Webflow, launching software. Okay, we're going to talk about that. continuing to experiment with the show. Yeah, I don't know where this is going to go. We may add more shows. We're going to do some stuff with that blockchain team. So we're going to kind of compartmentalize some of that. So we're not going to try to like have all the audiences commingled, but there may be stuff you want to see over there and things over here. I don't know how it's going to play out. Anyway, just stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun as we just grow in public. I'm going to continue to grow in public. We're going to grow this startup in public. We're going to launch some software in public. We're going to keep inviting you all to get involved. And I think you'll see that these tools fit in perfectly to help you all continue to grow your operations, whether that's as a freelancer, whether you're building a community, whatever it is you're trying to do. So, okay, let's see. We got a few new people who have joined us here since we started. Penny's in the house. Hello. Bree, hello. Let's see who else is in here. Sean, what's up, Sean? I hope you're coming up. Sean was at State of Flow with us and has had some medical issues, but Sean, I hope this means you're feeling a little better. Love to see you back in the crowd. Hello, Isabel. Zach Bujazia, what's up? The backstage is open. If anybody wants, the backstage is open. That comment is pinned. We're going to be jumping back into the crowd here in a little bit. Hello, the Keto Survivor and Rahul. What's up? What's up? Okay, current state of the web. So I want to talk a little bit about the premise of this, and the web is kind of broken right now, right? So we're seeing this unravel with Twitter, and I think this is probably like prevalent outside of just Twitter. I think this is probably a bigger issue than we're just going to see with Twitter. But, you know, like the internet and the incentives around how we publish and share and distribute information online have been perverted. And that's what's leading to a lot of, I think, what we're seeing with misinformation and a lot of the stuff that's happening with just polarized, right? Like we're all just polarized because the incentives around online publishing with social media, we were talking about this today in that earlier, if anybody was with us, that coffee Twitter spaces earlier today. Talking about how some of the incentives around how we share and distribute information are just aligned to polarize us, right? If it bleeds, it leads. This has been the model for media since the beginning of time, and the internet has really just amplified that. And what is interesting to me is that while this media machine is dying, while like sales is growing, the reason I got out of sales, first of all, just as an aside, the reason I got out of sales originally is because I thought it was a perversion, like it was getting to be perverted. Like I was being basically taught how to manipulate people on a daily basis. My sales training was literally to go out into the world, convince people that had never heard of me or my products, and to like sell them into buying this thing. And then what I saw was that technology was taking that sales training and it was magnifying it exponentially. And I didn't like that, right? I didn't like that. And I thought, hey, the internet's supposed to be this other thing. The internet is supposed to be a place where, you know, mass opportunity for lots of people. It's going to create a world of abundance. But what I then saw it become over the last decade was essentially this thing that took this predatory sales practice, this corporate profit, like profit-driven, rent-seeking mentality, and it just amplified it. It took all of these digital tools that, you know, like could be used to empower all of us, to help grow, to help build, to, as they were pitched to us, free the world. They just became this other thing that a small group of people were able to like perfectly tune to farm the intellect of humanity. And that is what became social media. That's what became all these platforms. That's what's driving most of the problems that we see at scale. And I think all of us who are building this web, who are kind of building this technology, whether you're doing it from a visual software development standpoint, whether you're writing full code, whether you're just creating the content, whether you're making the videos that go on YouTube, whatever role you're playing in this creator economy, it's time for us to start looking for ways to come together and figure out how we can kind of shift those incentives inside of how this internet works, right? I don't know, you know, I often talk about what does it look like to have something like the American Revolution, like a moment like that, but for the internet, where all of us as creators, all of we creators, right? You know, like the surrogate is we the people, we the creators. When do we the creators stand up to all these platforms and say, hey, you cannot take our creative content anymore without including us in the revenue that comes from this, in the fruits of this labor? And I think that's what you're starting to see with platforms like Patreon and Substack and even OnlyFans and things like Linktree and, you know, all these tools that are trying to really simplify the process of getting some kind of presence online that directs people back to a point where you can create a point of conversion, where you can sell something to somebody. And I think that like we're at the beginning of that shift that I was talking about, where the creators are fed up. Everyone's looking around saying like, hey, how do I get a piece of this pie? How do I sell something? How do I, instead of selling or building something for somebody else, how do I build something for me? How do I become the person that like can sell themselves? And this is how my journey started literally years ago, right? That's how I got started. I started blogging. The thing went viral. I was like, oh, hey, I made it. Here's lots of people seeing my stuff online, but there was no money coming from me. And what I realized is that people were grabbing that content. They were monetizing it on their websites. People like Huffington Post, Elite Daily, Business Insider. I was on Medium.com for the top 5 article for 6 months in a row. And no money was coming back into my pocket. And so since that day, I've been trying to figure out how to do this. And that led to a startup. The startup failed. That led to finding Webflow. Webflow has flourished. Lots of things have flourished in this space, but the space is also evolving. The technology is evolving to where so many more people are now doing this e-commerce thing. They're selling their products. They're, starting their business. They're becoming a freelancer. They're doing whatever they can to kind of break out in this space. And interestingly enough, you're seeing 2 trends take place right beside that. You're seeing the world of community kind of grow as a marketing trend. And I wonder why that is. I actually don't wonder. I could explain it, but we're not going to talk. We'll connect those dots in a second. But community is growing on one side, and then crypto is growing on the other side. And those are not just like happenstance. This isn't just happening by accident. These things are happening because there's a desire from the people who are building these things to also own these things. And as we roll out into this next phase of the internet, whether you want to call it Web 2.5, Web 3, whatever you want to label it, there will be this phase that evolves where essentially we're going to be the ones that own the infrastructure. And that has to, that requires a lot of things, right? It requires us to figure out how we're going to work together. It requires us to figure out how we're going to publish, how we're going to align these incentives, what are the tools. So that creates a lot of opportunities. And I think that's where we're trying to experiment. So with that, I'm going to leave this open just to some comments. I got a couple people in the background. I got Aviv jumped in back here, and I've got Search Historian Aiva in the back. So any thoughts from our background here? And if you'd like to join, again, here, let me bring that up. I think I have it up here. If anybody would like to join, the link is in the comments. You can see it right there. You can join in the background. We're going to open up the conversation here just a bit, and then I've got a few other things that I want to go on. So I've got some more ranting to do if we got nothing from the background here. But Aiva, Aviv, anything to say? No, they say keep ranting. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I want to talk about what were some of the mechanisms that we used to kind of build the trust, right? What are the mechanisms? Because for a long time, media was the mechanism, okay? The fourth estate. There's a reason there's 3 branches of the government, and then the media is supposed to be the fourth estate. And I'm talking about U.S. politics here because that's what I know. And so how do we create balance? Well, the media was one of those ways to create balance. It was this thing that was supposed to shine light on the shit that's going on. This is why free speech is ingrained as the #1 thing, the First Amendment, right? And we're getting into this environment. Again, we're seeing this with Twitter. We're just finding out the extent to which Twitter was kind of censoring open debate. And I have to imagine that this isn't just something that's happening on the Twitter platform. I think this is something that's happening across the entire internet, in all of tech. There's a reason you guys cannot know this, but the people who were at the conference will know this. I got up. There was a community Q&A moment during the live stream, or not during the live stream. I'm sorry, during the Webflow Conf, and they were answering questions. It was Vlad, McGuire, and I think Emily on stage. And I asked, with all the stuff happening in the censorship world, will Webflow ever take a position on censorship? Because as I see it in Twitter, as I see it in Facebook, as I see what YouTube is doing, as I see some of what these tech platforms are doing, I wonder, will Webflow ever reach a space where they're big enough to be in this conversation? And again, going back to creating institutions or creating entities that enable us to build trust and to mediate, we have to be careful, I think, how we let this infrastructure build around us, right? And Webflow is a private company that can do what they want. I love Webflow. I'm going to continue to use Webflow. But this goes into some of the interesting topics people have brought up about WordPress and being open source, and where does this technology go, and how does this kind of play out over the next few years as these conversations get more in depth. What happens when this media company, who's supposed to be a check and balance on a system, gets turned off by one of these publishing companies? And this is what we've seen, on Twitter. This is literally what's being revealed in these Twitter files. If anybody's keeping up, we're seeing the extent to which some of that stuff was taking place. And I'd be interested to know actually from anybody in the comments here, is anybody following along with the Twitter files? I'd be interested like in the comment to chat, or if you're in the background. I see Zach just popped in here too. Any thoughts on like the Twitter file stuff? What's going on with that? Like, I see, didn't read them yet. Maybe we can pull them up. Marseille's saying, yup. Business has little incentive in serving citizens. I think this is I don't think so, Carrie. Because like, okay, you could start a business with the intent to just defraud citizens, but the business isn't going to last very long. Like most businesses are built around the premise of offering value to their customer base, and this is the value that they exchange money for, right? And so most businesses actually, that's their only incentive, is to serve citizens. Now, that doesn't mean it's an altruistic, let's serve all the citizens arbitrarily, because there's a limit to the resources. But I think most businesses, and this is why the free market is important, this is why like the profit motive is important, because the incentive should be to like serve the people who promote and help you grow. This is not crazy to think about like on a small scale. Where people get lost is like it happens on a big scale and it becomes some big conspiracy that like all the businesses are just trying to siphon or take advantage of everyone. And some of them are, right? That's the problem, is that some, and once you get to a certain scale of business, it becomes difficult to not start taking advantage. Like this is like, we just saw FTX crash. FTX was a big example of human negligence. Like FTX was not a technological failure, right? FTX was not a crypto failure. FTX was a people failure. And so I think saying business has little incentive in serving citizens is like kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think, like some businesses are set up to, be pretty terrible, and some businesses are doing amazing things, right? Like, would you throw a Webflow into that mix? Like Webflow seems like they have a big purpose behind serving citizens and serving the people they build, that build on their product. I think that's a big part of why we, appreciate this community. So, yeah, business has little incentive serving citizens. I'm not sure. I'd be interested to hear your rebuttal on that, Carrie. Penny says, was it negligence really? The guy wasn't stupid. I think not negligence. I think it was greed. It's like any money corruption game, right? Like once you give somebody the opportunity to take advantage of power, they're going to take full advantage of the power. And when you let somebody grow unchecked like that with money, with whatever, yeah, a lot of times they're going to do it. They had no experience running a business. They had no experience, especially at that scale. So the money starts flowing in and it gets lost. And this is where okay, so to tie this back into the internet being broken, this is where things have a potential to go viral. Because before, it was very difficult to run a scam like these guys ran. You had to run it kind of in person. If you think about like, they're comparing it to Enron. It's like the biggest blunder since Enron, this FTX thing. Well, how do we let a group like that get away with it? Well, they gave a lot of money, going back to the incentives. They gave a lot of money to people in power to make this stuff happen. This was a bureaucratic nightmare all the way top to bottom. This is a symptom of the internet being broken, this thing that we just saw, right? Like FTX going down, all these people losing their money, all of this crazy shit we're seeing on the internet are literally outgrowths of people pushing all of these buttons. Look, everyone's got a keyboard at their house, right? And that keyboard's connected to a machine that talks to the internet. And if you're smart enough, you can touch this keyboard in ways that break everything right now, right? And this is like the interesting thing, is that all these machines, all these systems that we're building around us run off of code. They run off of technological like improvements that we've made, and those technological improvements are only as good as the people using them. And so, yeah, Penny, I'm not sure it was pure negligence, but I think there's a lot of negligence. I think there's a lot of malice. I think there's a lot of naivety. I think there's a lot of lack of clarity in what they're doing. And this is one of the worst part about it, is that it gives crypto, all of crypto, a bad name, because, like, okay, so I want to capture this because I've had this thought in my mind for a little bit, but I haven't actually recorded it. People talk about like losing faith in crypto because of what just happened at FTX, and they're like, oh, this is the end of crypto, blah, 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 blah. No, this is the beginning of crypto, because somebody just pulled off the oldest scheme they've ever run with money, with this new thing called crypto that everybody thinks is not money. And so what this actually means is that it is real. The world we're living in is real. Digital dollars are about to become very real. This is just the beginning of how that plays out. And I think we're going to see a lot more chaos as it all shakes out. Whether we're talking about Webflow, whether we're talking about like artificial intelligence, because that plays a big picture into here, whether we're talking about blockchain stuff, like whatever it is, like all of these worlds are going to blend together at the user experience level, at the community layer. So going back to the two things that I think, these two trends that are emerging right now, which is community growth, and right next to that, the crypto growth, there's a reason. It's because the crypto technology protects the community's owned assets, right? If these communities continue to build inside of centralized places, then the people who own those places will always take control. They'll always do a Twitter, no, we're in control of the conversation, or they'll always do an FTX, no, we own the money, it's not yours. And so what we're looking for in this next layer is that the people who are doing the work, who are building all these things, own the things they're building so that they can't be pulled out from underneath them. That's going to be super important. So, yeah. And then Marseille saying, and the crazy hype that I just want to be a millionaire today. That's a big push. VC architecture is broken. I agree. I think this whole, like, all of it's broken. Right. And I think we need to talk a little bit about how we can fix it more than just, talking about how it's broken. But I think there's so much here. And this is this goes back to, again, like, we've never had the ability to shift so much in the real world with just mental effort. Right. Up until literally this last 5-10 years, in order to make the type of impact that we're having at scale in society, you had to get out of your house. You had to like organize a shit ton of people. You had to go find a venue. You had to like meet in person. You had to do so many different things. And then if you wanted to like change something, you had to show up and exert physical force. And we're entering an era where like now that change agent, that aggregate attention that can force that change is being assembled digitally. And no amount of philosophy, no amount at looking back at the history books and understanding like where we went wrong as a society is going to prepare us for the next chapter of what's coming here. And this is why I think it's so important for us to kind of like, again, create venues where we can chat that are outside of just one specific tool, that are just more open to thinking about the greater landscape that's being built around us here and thinking about how our interactions and how the things we do play into that space. So, without that said, I see Aiva. You just dropped a comment here. So, anybody want to jump in from the background before I take off on my next topic, Ter?
I can.
Let's see, I don't know how to do this with. There we go.
So yeah, you know what resonated with me here, because like from SEO world, the more I think what happens is the more you learn, the more you don't want to use certain things. And this is exactly one of those scenarios, right? You don't want to read about the best laptops, because when you realize how those things are produced and how that information was made and what's the incentive behind it, because you do that every day yourself, gradually you become less and less kind of interested in actually using it. But the global population doesn't know that, like you said today on the coffee and Webflow, your mom doesn't know what is AI. And we're kind of at this frontier where it's hard to know what's happening. So that kind of resonated with that part of like, the more you find out about stuff, usually it kind of rejects you even more, even though it should welcome you. And that's the current state of things. And I think that's where, VC problem comes into play. Only scaling, only growing, pay as much as you need, and that's where the problem starts, that VC just brings wrong incentives to the table. And that's the current world. And that for that to change, the way we measure success should change, as that 1 million is not the success, but like 100 people that work there and love it. I think that's success, right?
Yeah. Carrie's got a good follow-up here on that. It says, most VC-funded startups I've worked at have committed some level of fraud because of scaling pressure. And this is not, again, this is when you align the incentives to this perpetual growth thing. Like I used to do this in sales. We had, I used to work in this sweatshop sales organization, and our goal was to run around. If you've ever heard of, like it was the online division of Staples. It was kind of attached to Staples, but it wasn't. It was called Quill. So if you've ever bought like office supplies online, you've probably run into a company called Quill. I used to sell office supplies door to door for them, and the goal was to go into businesses and help folks reorder their office supplies, or if they hadn't ordered in a while, like reactivate their account, or if they've never ordered, to teach them how easy it was to order discounts, and we had coupons and whatever, blah blah blah. Well, a lot of times we would run into organizations who loved Quill. They loved the system, and it was a big organization. And like, I would love to walk into places that were like that, but hadn't ordered in a certain amount of time, because we could always reorder their supplies for them and give them a discount, and then we'd get a commission on the product. But sometimes they'd be super current. And guess what we would do? We would find a new division, some new organization, some new department that needed their own account, and we'd start them a brand new Quill account, and we'd give them the 20% discount. And it was always aligned with their incentives to get the 20% discount. It was aligned with my incentives because I, wanted to make the commission on the sale that they would have otherwise ordered without me. And the only way it wasn't aligned was for the business, right? But they like, the amount of times they would choose not to pay us commission, or that they would roll back things, or the limited stuff they would pay us commissions on was totally like shit. That's why I would call it sweatshop sales. And so we would always find ways to hustle the system to make sure we could get those extra accounts when we could get them, especially when we ran into opportunities like that. And we'd end up coaching the client on how to answer when they called and blah, blah, whatever. So it's a little skeezy, but again, your boy had to eat, right? And so it's like there's a quote about, it's difficult for somebody to understand how things work when their incentives are aligned with them not understanding how it works. And that's, like a lot of the systems that we have around us are built and structured to kind of do some of that. And what I see right now is the internet amplifying those things in the opposite direction of which we should, right? I see pockets of people doing good, but that doesn't get the same amplification or the same traction or the same exposure as, the shitty stuff, or the let's make money stuff, or the let's look at big butts or half naked bodies, or whatever the next thing is, right? Whatever the next scammy sales pitch is. I sometimes lose my mind when I go into when I watch regular TV and I see ads, and I remember that I live detached from just any kind of traditional advertising or consumerism in general. And then you go into the world and you see how plastered around it is, especially here in the US. Yeah.
Yeah, that's human condition. I think that's unavoidable. We're always going to be looking for better, faster, stronger, better, always better, right? Just better.
Here's Carrie's got the quote for me. It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. Upton Sinclair of the Jungle. Yeah, that's it. And so going back to the whole premise of this is we have to learn how to realign these incentive structures. We have to figure out how to just dump this system that we've built around us. We're building the new infrastructure. We're building these new companies. We're the next episode we do is going to be called something called Digital Stone Soup. And I'm going to do a full episode on Digital Stone Soup. It's a story about collaboration. If you've watched any of my streams before, if you've been hanging out with us for a while, you've probably heard this story. But I want to record it right at the beginning so people can watch. And I'm going to try to figure out how to tell this Digital Stone Soup story. But I think we all bring something unique to the table. Some of us bring Webflow skills. Some of us bring full code skills. Some of us bring design skills. Some of us bring, finance skills, or whatever it is that you bring to the table. I want to figure out how we can use this platform, this momentum, some of the things that are going on all around us to benefit one layer up. All right. I know I can build a community. If I wanted to, this is going back to this week in Webflow, which I'm not sure I'm going to keep doing. If I wanted to apply myself and go full steam at building the best This Week in Webflow videos every week and blah, 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 I might be able to do that. And I might be able to build an audience around it. However, I'm not sure that aligns the best with the goals that I'm having right now. And I'm really trying to refocus my attention on what are the things that have the most impact on my long-term goals. And those long-term goals are to see if I can take some of these processes and things that have made me successful over the last couple years and turn them into systems that other people can use, right? And whether those systems are processes or community-based things or actual like software, I'm not sure yet. But that's where I want to spend the majority of my time. And as much as I enjoy keeping y'all up to date on like the This Week in Webflow, there's other things that I'd like to inject in there, right? Like sometimes I'd like to talk about some other trends on the web. Sometimes I'd like to talk about, like this FTX thing, or I'd like to talk about trends in, finance or technology outside of just this scope of Webflow. And that's really, where I think I'm going here with some of the community stuff we're doing. Again, we're going to continue to support all of the existing Webflow stuff, but I think that community has reached a certain level of maturity that, we can step away and just support these other groups and also then add on these other things, right? I think we can continue to support that growth, but then add on these other things around the edges that may add more value than just, me spending 4 or 5 hours a week curating the top, whatever it is in the space, how websites, etc. Just go follow the State of Flow website. We'll still keep putting the stuff on there, but I don't know that we're going to make a video about it every week, just as we experiment here. So in that regard, maybe I could show y'all, I questioned whether, I questioned whether I would show this today or not. A sneak peek at the deck of what we're building here. What I'm building, this Atmos thing. I showed some of you the product before, but maybe we can do this. Let's go to this view. Boom. Oh, get rid of that. Yeah. Sorry, Ava. Okay, so let's just go through this a little bit. I'm going to do this a lot more rehearsed. This is V1. Literally, this deck is not ready to be sharing with anybody, but in the spirit of, building in public. Okay, so the core problem, and this is kind of what we've dissected as part of this show here, is that creators want to own their platform, but building digital products is hard. That's the core premise here, right? So one, this forces creators onto social media or single-purpose platforms like Linktree, Patreon, Substack, OnlyFans, etc., as they attempt to monetize their creative output. This is why we're seeing some of these platforms grow. And so what I have here at the bottom is simple and easy to use on the left, fully functional but technically complex all the way to the right. 2, so full feature web publishing platforms like WordPress, Webflow, Wix, Shopify, etc. are feature rich, but technically complicated and are not optimized for collaborative editorial workflows, right? So a lot of these are not set up to basically be like social media companies or publishing entities. They're meant to be like websites or e-commerce stores or blogging platforms. And so, some of the things that Substack and Patreon and, even OnlyFans at a certain level does better than some of the other ones, like some of them have benefits over the other, okay, but they don't all fit the need. And then there's custom, right? So this means creators are left working inside of software silos and lack the tools to collaboratively build feature-rich interactive web properties that can replace the current publishing infrastructure without overcoming significant technical or financial hurdles. Let's pop that just a bit bigger, right? And so you got to go full code, or you have to you're limited by some design restriction, or you're limited by some template, or you got to use some kind of in the box thing. And there's another problem with these Substack and Patreons and like single membership subscription things, is that in a few years you're not going to have 50 subscriptions. You might have 1 or 2, right? You're not going to have all of these subscriptions. You're going to have a limited number of subscriptions, and you're going to face the same problem that like major news, cable news, TV faced as they scaled, right? The reason cable news existed is because there was no way to feasibly figure out which channels you were going to put on the TV and then charge people individually for them. And so they needed to bundle the channels. And so we're going to see the same problem happen with Patreon and Substack, et cetera, where they're going to need to bundle the creators and then offer packages at that level. And the best thing to do that is, again, the Webflows or the WordPresses or the Squarespace, like a website, but those things are tough to build. And so most people are stuck using some of these other platforms. So the solution becomes leverage existing tech to make it easier for creators to build collaboratively owned web properties. Okay, so take something that looks and feels like these interfaces, very simple to use, very, like social-like, if you will, but let it spit out the content into something that's fully owned, right? So find somebody who can build in Webflow, find somebody who can build your WordPress site, get one person to build it, and then leverage that as the core place where you invite your contributor networks, right? Build some kind of tool, this Atmos thing that we're about to introduce, that allows people to work together to collaboratively monetize their online presence, but to do so on a property that they owned as a final destination, right? So this means they own the SEO, they own the URL, they own the attention, they own everything, okay? And so that brings us into this Atmos product, this personalized filter for the internet. This is one of the things that we're trying to build. This is, again, we'll talk about this more. This is not a fully baked cake yet. You're seeing a sneak peek into kind of the underbelly of where we're headed. Okay, so your personalized filter for the internet. Atmos provides a layer of social context that sits over top of the open web. It gives content creators tools to grow their online presence and monetize their creative output while rewriting the rules for collaborative publishing and content curation. So think about how Google works, right? Google indexes URLs. Why? Because URLs are anchors on the internet. Therefore, they become like static places to send attention. And then based on how people react when they go to visit that destination, then Google interprets whether or not there's a signal there to then send in front of more people who are looking for that type of thing. This is the basic how search works. Well, for some reason, when we built social media, we decided to flip that script. And we said, no, let's take the URL, remove it from its anchor on the web, and pull it into this walled garden. And then let's put the social stuff around this thing totally detached from that URL, which is, I mean, okay for like the thing it created. But if you want to create this next thing, why not take all that social behavior, all that social activity, and connect it to the URL? Why not, just the same way Google does, anchor all the social activity to a URL on the open web? That way, anytime you find yourself on that final destination, you can pull it up and get a feel for what's happening on that URL without having to leave the open web to go into a walled garden, right? So this is the concept of atmosphere. If you think about going into a new city, like if you're visiting a new city and you want to figure out where you're going to go for lunch, you're walking down Main Street and there's an empty restaurant on one side and a full restaurant on the other, you may decide to go to the full restaurant where there's like a band and people are like buzzing and there's a little bit of atmosphere, okay? But on the internet, there's not an easy way to do that when you approach a URL. This is why social media has become so ubiquitous, because we can go to social media and try to find whether there's any social credibility. But you can fake that also with money and with advertising and what we're seeing. And so there's no real way to tell whether something's trustworthy, whether the atmosphere is good, whether there's anything worth exploring here. And this is where I think we can get interesting with new innovations on the web and technology that we can build that, again, help anchor that to the URL experience, decentralize that social experience. So here's what we're playing with. A little browser extension that connects to any website, right? Any website you want. Browser extension turns any website into a decentralized social experience. So bring the follow here. Sort your activity by the full network or just the page. There's also a little privacy filter here, right, for your interactions. So you can pick who sees what activity based on what you're looking at, right? So taking your membership and bringing that out into the open web, sending structured data to your end property. So let's say you find something interesting. Instead of just sharing like a small field like Twitter or Instagram gives you, why not then pull up a field that lets you send structured data instead? So let's say you find something interesting on the web. Instead of just saying, hey, I found this thing over here on this URL, what if you grabbed exactly what it was on that page that you found was interesting, mapped it to your structured data inside of Webflow, and send it off to the dance? And then next thing you know, you've got an activity feed that says Raymmar left a note on this site that will take me to that page. And this becomes a great way to then understand what's happening on the web, but sending the output. Instead of building a Pinterest page, instead of building a shared Facebook group or a Reddit page or whatever, you own that destination. You can monetize that destination. You can build and do whatever you want with that output. That becomes a superpower as it relates to creators. So that's where I think kind of this next layer of thing can go. I don't know how deep into this deck we want to go, but there's obviously some trends in the market right now. You know, we talked about Patreon, Substack, OnlyFans, et cetera, Linktree, kind of these platforms growing. We talked about how the web is kind of, it's scaling right now. But it's technically complicated and expensive to build and manage these things. So the Atmos plugin aims to, like leverage the tools that all of these major publishing platforms, all of these Webflows and WordPress and Squarespace and whatever comes behind it, like whatever they build, no big deal. You can just plug right into that, right? But you own the data, you own the content, you own the attention, and then you can control that. Imagine we're all watching like the WWDC is a great one. Apple does these big events, and let's say they're live streaming on YouTube, and there's millions of people watching, and you can't keep up with the comments. Well, what if you were part of some like, tech circle, and you could open up this extension, and right over the top of that live stream, you're hanging out with just your homies, right? And now you have a limited conversation that's happening over top of this YouTube video that YouTube can't stop, that YouTube's not in charge of, that YouTube doesn't even know you're there, other than you loaded a website. But you're having this social experience with all of your friends. All that activity is actually taking place on top of that website. So now Google, the browser, et cetera, sees that on-page activity as a really strong, web signal. I'm going to address this from Omkar. He says, you're just turning the entire web into a social media. Kind of, right? It's like a social layer of context that overlays the entire open web, right? And so it's kind of that. It's not fully that, but it's kind of that. This thing just kind of explains the value propositions. I'm happy to share this deeper with anybody else, but just talks about where the platforms fall short, this ability to have private networks, the syndicate networks. I want to talk something about actually syndicates versus followers. So these next two slides get real interesting. This isn't a lot of value here, but syndicates versus followers. This is like the big difference here. In current social media, right? Everything is set up to build silos. Literally every piece of the system is set up to perpetrate silos. Let me see if I can get this to zoom in proper here. Yeah, like 125. Okay. Okay, so each of these is a content creator. So if we look in here, these nodes, it's a content creator with their website, with their social platforms, and then they have an email list, right? Their email list is a silo. Their website is a silo. It's not connected to social other than when they post. And the content that they post to the website does nothing except for point people back to them. And it's kind of a dead end, right? If I send somebody to my website, when they get done looking at my website, they leave my website, it's over. Right? That attention's lost. When I send somebody to social, the reason social beat out most of the modern web platforms is because they made it easier to do, but they also brought in the network. And so if this other content creator is also posting to social, and the social media puts all of our posts together in a feed, now they help build the attention. They're the ones that harness all of the output of these content creators, right? They're the place everyone comes to build the hub. Okay, well, that's not the best way to do it, I think. I think the future, right? This is built on a single follower relationship. But what I think like the next evolution of social platforms will be is more about a syndicate network, where instead of being a follower, I actually turn on my digital network to empower you as a creator as part of my syndicate network. So if you are somebody who takes an active role in building my community or being a part of whatever we're building, or whatever that next layer is up from a follow relationship, because a follow relationship is a passive relationship. A syndicate relationship is an active relationship. So if I want to take an active role in your online network and we can create some kind of link back between that, imagine I send someone to my website, and then when they get to the bottom of my article, instead of leaving my website, I've picked other people who I might want to display there who are also talking interesting things about the same thing I'm talking about. Right, and we'll talk a little bit later because I'll show you how that exists, and current business models are already doing that type of thing. So imagine then also from a syndicate standpoint, when I follow somebody, right, follower for syndicate, if I follow somebody, again, it's a passive role. When they share content, it just shows up in my feed, maybe, if the algorithm approves, right, if the algorithmic gods approve this. And then I get to choose, do I like this or whatever, like, With the idea behind a syndicate role is that like I'm actively involved in your marketing enterprise here. So imagine if a syndicate gets the question, hey, would you like to syndicate this content? And they say yes, it populates their digital network. So now I've just given that piece of content access to show up on my website, to be displayed in a feed that might be related to something they're doing, to somehow throw this content in a pot that many people can kind of operate and look like. And so let's look at the next layer of what these symbiotic relationships look like, how this atmosphere between the web can look like. And essentially what we're talking about is attaching your owned networks, a owned network, multiple owned networks, whatever you want, multiple destinations, attaching social around the rest of that. So you have your own networks, you have your shared networks around it. And then on the outside, you have contributors who you can assign permissions to that whole network. And so what we're doing is figuring out how do you turn the entire modern web infrastructure into a decentralized distributed media company that any group of creators can leverage to like amplify their digital reach. Right? And then how can the ownership of these entities, these final entities, be decentralized? So how can we build something together where, let's say, our website becomes the next New York Times, that we own that, not the middlemen, not the people who are like managing the website or whatever the fuck that means, right? It's us as the content creator. So imagine the top 10 journalists who have just left their media companies and they go to Substack. Instead of them going to Substack and building their own silos inside of Substack, imagine if they all got together and they like the money and revenue they generated at Substack was actually coming back to themselves. Not at what percentage Substack decided, but at like the lion's share percentage. Okay? That's where I think this goes next. And so then inside of here, you have, again, each creator hub that shares their audience, shares their assets, and you get these reciprocal, like you get these new networks, these new nodes. And this is a slide that needs a little bit of work, but we're going to jump to why State of Flow becomes a very interesting experiment in this, right? Because if we go look at that website, and we just go to stateofflow.io and we click on any of these, like, boom, it takes you out to another thing. It takes you out to the FinSuite thing. Okay, first one I click. If I take you Flow Party, where's that going to take me? To the Flow Party circle. Okay, this is their stuff. This is not like, so we're not building a media property that shines light on us. Do you understand what's happening here? We're building a media company that shines light on you, the community. And then we're going to invite everyone to come play inside of this circle. And what will happen is people will see this brand above it and they'll be like, oh, you're a contributor for how does that work? And eventually they'll find out, oh, it's a community run media company. But the better we get at pushing value into this centrally owned property, the better like it looks for each of us that have content inside of here. And as we build this game, as we figure out how to invite people into this game and say, hey, you're a trusted contributor, you can now share whatever content you want inside of this space. And based on how people interact with that space, you may earn, some type of benefits by interacting with that, by doing that, whether it's direct dollars, whether it's exposure dollars. We're going to figure out how to actually quantify the game around building value in a shared network. And this is where I think things get really, really interesting. And there's a value proposition here that like nobody can really match in the space because we're daisy chaining all of these things together. And the better your website gets and the more active you get in the community, the bigger the hole grows. And like, it just becomes this really cool value exchange on the internet that nobody's really thinking about. How can we experiment like this? I promise you no major media company's thinking about this because their incentives, going back to the quote Carrie shared earlier, their incentives are aligned in not making sense of this. Their incentives are aligned in keeping the silos because they own the silos, right? So nobody's going to give up or sell their property. We have to show and build new ways to do this that, again, if we go back to the first slide, means creators are left working inside of software silos and lack the tools to collaboratively build feature-rich, interactive web properties that can replace the current publishing infrastructure without overcoming significant technical or financial hurdles. We're going to overcome the significant technical and financial hurdles. We're raising the money. We're going to build the tech. And then we're going to give this to the fucking world. And I'm talking like the reason this is in crypto, the reason we're doing a lot of this, like a lot of this is going to be open source. A lot of this is going to be open to the community. The things we're doing are about helping and giving back into this space and not just at a micro level, like we're talking about at a macro level. We want to look at all of this. How can you impact the entire internet? This thing sits at the intersection of three like really profitable and two emerging markets. Ad tech and MarTech is not going anywhere. We talked about this earlier. $837 billion is what this current industry sits at, and it's growing. Okay. The creator economy is $104 billion. As of 2022, there are an estimated 50 million people contributing to the creator economy. 46.7 million of those creators consider themselves amateurs. This is also going to continue to grow. So the question I want to ask is, how do we take the $837 billion and pump that money into this creator economy? How do we take all these advertising dollars that essentially siphon off the creative output from all of us and monetize it in a way that 5 companies on the world, Viacom, Google, Amazon, Facebook, monetize, maybe some niche advertisers, some niche podcast networks, some small little advertising syndicate networks, but it's all sitting there. Why isn't this money sitting here? So that's the shift we're going to see over the next 10 years. And the crypto blockchain, the reason that's connected is because it's going to allow us to do it, right? It's going to allow us to build that decentralized architecture that won't allow it to be shut down. And if you look, I got a couple proven business models. There's some, Rev Content, Taboola, Outbrain. Like, there are businesses that are already building this, and the infrastructure is just set up for publishers and advertisers to succeed, not the creators. And so this is us standing up and saying, like, yo, it's time to dance. So I feel like I've let it all out here. We do have some ideas about the revenue model and how that will work, but like I said, this is not it's not totally fully fleshed out here. But this is where we're headed. I'm working with a very talented team. You're going to hear more about what's going on in the blockchain space. I'm not going to become like one of these crypto crazy fools, right? Crypto will get exciting when people stop talking about it. Like, nobody here talks about, we do a little bit. We talk about, is it built Webflow, bubbles, whatever. Like, we want to know the stack. But in general, like, crypto will become exciting to the mainstream when nobody's talking about crypto. And so, like, we're not leading with crypto on the product we're building. On the Wire Network, on the blockchain side, obviously we're leading with crypto. That's a crypto startup. But on this side of things, the goal is to empower creators to take these tools and figure out, how do you give the folks that are building the future of the web the tools to actually, like, own and monetize the chunks of it that they build. And then also how to work together with other people who have similar interests to do the same thing. So that's kind of that. A reminder, if anybody's interested, we do have, if you'd like to jump in and just chat with me about this, the backstage is open. I'll leave this on for, a little while here. I got Aviva in the background still. I think we had like a little internet drop because I lost Zach and Aviva at the same time. But yeah, thanks, Josh. Love it, Raymmar. This is it. This could be it. I failed at this. By the way, I failed at, just like pure disclosure, in the total sense of building in public. I failed at this startup once. It's the reason I found Webflow. I don't remember when I told that story, but if you go watch the chapter 1, Structured Chaos or whatever, like, I failed at trying to build this because we were trying to build the CMS and the backend and the code, the whole, like, we're trying to build everything, and also this little social layer, and also all the backend of, like, the websites and all the different things. It was like, holy shit, that's way too much. So this is like 5 years removed, 7 years removed of kind of failing at the first attempt at that, understanding how the web's evolved. And I think we were early. I think before, one of the things, like, I had to convince people why we were building this or why it was relevant. Now everyone understands. So there's something about, like, where this is going and how, I think the timing's just right. That's what I'm trying to say here, I guess. This Raymar's baby, it's awesome to see it fleshed out. Let's see, Sterling's thought, would this be like an interactive content management system? Yeah, kind of. Yep. That's exactly it. It's like, think about the game we're playing online right now on social media, except we're spitting all of our work into somebody else's, like, property. It's like you go to work every day and you build somebody else's house and you come home and sleep in a fucking shed or out under a tree. No, come build your own house, But as you build your own house, connect it to a network, and let's build cities of these networks together, right? Like, let's create some density around these nodes, around these digital networks that we're all building. Like, let's build doors to each other, right? Going back to, if anybody's familiar, we're going to talk about this too. I'm showing, let me go back to the screen here. I'm showing here on the screen Rev Content, Taboola, and Outbrain. If anybody's familiar, or if you're not familiar with these, like, we're going to be talking a little bit about these. These all operate off of something called an arbitrage advertising model. And essentially, this is how most of the modern media infrastructures run. And what this means is, like, let's say I am the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or whoever it is. And I know that on average, it costs me, X number of dollars to generate X number of clicks, which means I get my average per viewer click at a penny per eyeball. Well, at the bottom of that article, maybe I want to sell that attention. And one of these companies will pay me 3 cents a click for putting an article at the bottom. And so that's why when you go to these platforms and you read an article at the bottom, it'll say, like, powered by Outbrain, powered by Taboola, powered by Rev Content. Those are native ads, or supposed to be like look like they're native ads by the original media company that just link you out into some ad farm, right? That initial link targets you, puts you into a box. Next thing you know, you're on a page, for some other product, probably surrounded by a bunch of more things to click on. And now the game's on. Now you've just become their eyeball, and they'll track you all around the internet and whatever they can do. And the penny per eyeball click that I generated at the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, whatever it is, now became 4 cents for me. And so I've arbitraged my eyeball traffic to make profit. And so all these media companies that you see any of this shit on are no longer about giving you information. They're about arbitraging your eyeballs. They're about arbitraging your attention in order to drive back some of this, where is it, $837 billion of advertiser profit. So, and these are very, very, very lucrative businesses, right? And imagine if half of the effort of building these businesses was actually built in figuring out how to create infrastructure for creators to kind of daisy chain themselves. Dustin, awesome to hear you sharing this, bro. Smart move for us all to focus more on empowering ourselves over the platforms. Yes, that's it. Right? Like, we all use these platforms in ways that they intend for us to be using them, which is okay. But also, like, can we use them in ways that we want them used? Like, what's the best way for us to use these platforms? And really to build the next layer of platforms. Great for musicians. It's going to be great for all creators. Actually, so here's what's happening. We have experiments happening in the crypto world. The State of Flow thing is going to be the visual software development experiment. I have a friend in the entertainment business that we're going to be experimenting with in the music/entertainment space, and we're looking for like some nonprofit stuff to get involved. So we're looking for, something in the nonprofit sector, to maybe somebody with a big community that we can kind of plug into and see how we can, help people in the nonprofit sector as well. So those are kind of like the 4 channels. We'd be interested in other verticals, but those are the 4 we've identified as like, first layer channels to kind of just get started. So let's see. Yeah, in a meeting with my finance monitor, got to watch the recording later. Yeah. Sounds a lot like Reddit in many ways other than ownership. Yes, there's pieces of this everywhere on the internet. There's little pieces of it. This is where that's where I talk about like your personalized filter for the internet, right? It's like a layer of context that's going to allow you to kind of link up different pieces of the internet, but then open those pieces of the internet up to a syndicate network that will be made up from your community and give open access to just kind of, again, leverage these tools as the publishing infrastructure for the web, right? The only way you can compete in the future with Google or Facebook or any of these things is you have to disrupt their business model, but leave the whole internet untouched. So how do you do that? Is you shift the incentives towards the audience, and you make the audience themselves the advertising distribution mechanism. And then you incentivize them to protect that audience as if it was their baby, because it's their reputation, it's their credibility, and only in like niche networks. It's not like a general social credibility thing. It's like, hey, when I want to talk about Webflow, my weight should carry a little bit more than some WordPress person who's never used Webflow, right? And so can you understand those things? Can you build systems that allow those types of incentives to be realigned? And then give the top 50, 60, 80, 100 people doing those things, 1,000 people doing those, whatever it is, however many people come together to build that network, let them then own the ad revenue, and you take the money from that ad pocket and you spit it out into the creator pocket, and you have a whole new game called the internet to play. Let's see. Nicely done. Can't wait to be a part of a syndicate and to shift the way we all grow and thrive in the future. Yeah, Glenn. Perfect. Peter, yeah, looking forward. Anybody that was at State of Flow, anybody that's involved in this community, anybody that's just kind of around, like, it's open right now. It's open access. We do have an alpha version of the browser extension we're playing with. It's a little buggy right now, which is why we haven't gone kind of full stream inviting everyone in so far. But I'm hoping that by the new year, actually by the end of this week, I'm hoping to have a stable version of that. By the end of the year, I'm hoping to be able to be in a place where we can just really start inviting folks in and organizing a couple of these experiments. There's lots of people that I see every time I see one of these new sites on, that they're like, look at this list of resources or this whatever built-in Webflow. I'm like, oh, that's exciting because I'm going to give you a tool to make that so much easier moving forward. So stay tuned for that is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Peter, what are some of your strategies for educating the average user on the internet? I think I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm focused more on educating you all on why you should change the direction of what you're doing to kind of be more in line with something that points back to you rather than continuing to feed the game. Everyone else will just catch up. If we worry about trying to educate everyone, it'll take too long. It'll be too challenging. Too many people will fight us. What I'll focus on doing is finding folks like yourselves who are interested in kind of like the base level operationally of what's going on here, because you're already interested in that, because you're already building websites, because you're already trying to build a community, because you're already trying to launch a product or do something. And those will be kind of my first layer. Hey, come experiment with us. They will then ideally, as they build their networks, teach and show the world. Right now, this thing lives as a browser extension, but ideally it would also be a plugin that you can just put into your website. And then as you, website owner, network hub owner, Atmos network owner, builds your little hub, like you'll be able to offer people this experience even if they don't have the browser extension, because it'll just be a JavaScript plugin on your website. But then maybe at the bottom you have an add to Chrome or take this with you, and then like that starts growing the network. And wait till you see the way you can create private conversations. And I think there's something interesting there. Like, imagine I'm a financial planner, and there's a lot of people that do this type of business model. Imagine I'm a financial planner who sells a membership, and what I sell is a weekly newsletter that gives you my best advice for picking stocks or whatever. Imagine if instead of waiting for that newsletter, as I do my research and as I read the article and I see this article on CNBC about FTX, or I see this article about whatever, and I want to like give you I just highlight the page and I just leave my context on the page. And instead of you waiting for the newsletter, you just get a little ping next time you open your browser and pop into this community, and you see all of my research live, right? And so when you want to go into that network, you just see the research. And then when you click, it takes you to the page in context, and it shows you what I'm talking about and why I think it's wrong or why I think it's right, And so instead of that happening in an email and me trying to like give you this type of experience, like when you're ready to like learn and dive in, come to this experience, get the activity feed from the people you're paying to hear from, and let them show you the part of the internet that they got the information you want to go. It's like first principles for social media, right? That's it. Like, I just think there's so much value there. Because it's a big shift in thinking. It is a big shift in thinking, but I think the experience for most people will be the same. Like, you'll be interacting with websites. You'll be like reading activity feeds. Like, the average person will not see a noticeable difference on the internet, right? This will all feel like Webflow sites or WordPress sites or whatever. And then there will be like this group of us that are building those things that will kind of be doing this hard work and reaping the rewards of the future internet that's built off of tools like this. Sir Lancelot's asking, what do I need help with? Oh, the list is long. If you're in the Slack channel and are interested in getting involved, the Digital Stone Soup episode, which we'll be doing, I think it's January 3rd, whatever that Wednesday is. Let me look. Tuesday, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the first Tuesday of the year, January 3rd, we're going to be doing a stream. I think. Yeah, okay, I'm looking at that right. We're going to be doing a stream called Digital Stone Soup, where we're going to be talking about how everyone can kind of get involved here or what the next steps are for anyone. So, and changing behavior is hard, but the incentives. Oh, did I lose my comments? I lost my comments, it looks like. Oh, there they are. Just that one doesn't want to. Oh, there it is. Most of the internet runs affiliate game just like that. That's right. Social platforms is valuable. We don't think of many conversations on social platforms as valuable. We should. We definitely should. So, all right. I think that's all I got. I wasn't even sure how that was going to go today, but I think we just laid out a nice little case there and planted our flag. In case anybody's wondering what the heck he's up to over there, now I'll have something to be able to share with people. I'll probably clip out the second half of this specifically and really just use that to point people who want to get a deep dive. But yeah, you have now a sneak peek. Aiva, I still got you in the background here. Do you want to share any final thoughts for being a trooper hanging out?
I mean, another day, another great brand.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm listening to you kind of doing the same thing in last 3 hours, second time.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. This is awesome. It's a lot of questions I have, but intentionally didn't want to bother you because I knew you probably.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time. This is when it might be fun. If anybody wants, I'd like to. Yeah, like my favorite part is not necessarily doing the pitch here, because I've just kind of been thinking about how to lay this story out. And if anybody's close with me, you've heard me talking about this for a long time. But I'm just kind of just figuring out, I'm just finally laying it out and getting it all into a place that we can share with the world in a meaningful way. So something up there he is. Yeah, so I like the questions because the questions are how you really get the deep answers. You know, like the pitch is one thing, but like it's really when you start shooting bullets through the strategy that that I get excited, because that's when we get into the weeds. So I'm happy to do any of that. If anybody has questions, Marcelo saying this is the context shift. That's right. Really great, big ideas. Thanks, Raymmar. Nice questions. I'm about to become the unofficial. That's what I'd like to see, man. I need to find one of the things I want to do with these is also invite other people to come hang. You know, just come and be in the background. I should be a little more structured with that instead of just randomly like whoever shows up. You know, maybe invite a few people at a time.
The flowers probably never leave their house and are shy. So that's that's what's happening here.
The magic of converging. Now's the time. Cheers, everyone. Got to bounce. See you, Glenn. Appreciate you hanging out with us. I agree. It's not a coincidence that these things are kind of happening right now in the market. So, all right. I think that's all I got. Aiva, did you have any specific questions or?
No, man, I want to see it and I want to try it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to bombard you with questions. And I think this is not the last we heard of this. This is just the beginning. So I'm just interested how you guys spin it together, because there's so many questions and without seeing, it's not even.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. This is going to be one of those things that takes a little while to unfold. When will Atmos Beta be released? I don't know. I'm still not putting a timeline on it, especially not a beta. But the alpha, we have a couple people playing with it right now. We have it connected to the State of Flow site. We have it connected to the nocode.video site. We're slowly just trying to figure out the little kinks, the activity feeds, certain pieces of this that just kind of need to be refined. But real soon, I'm hoping, Josh, real soon. Brandon, yeah, excited for 2023. I agree. And yeah, expect us to, again, like I said, it's just going to be an experiment in building in public. We're not going to get everything right. I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. I don't pretend to. You know, I'm not one of these clowns that's going to pretend like I know exactly what I'm doing at every step of the way. I'm going to rely on you all, right? I'm going to use the crowd's knowledge here, the crowd's wisdom. And so we're going to let the crowd shape the direction of this company. We're probably going to put this State of Flow brand into a DAO at some point. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So like it will literally be a community run thing. We're already talking about writing bylaws. We're talking about what does the structure look like to hand this thing off. Like I don't want to own this thing. I want to be a part of helping build this thing and lots of other things around it. And so what we're looking for, Lance, I think asked before about what do we need help with. Whatever you want to contribute. We're going to be looking for people to curate content. We're going to be looking for people to create content. If you're a video creator, if you're a content creator already, we're going to be looking for content to kind of feed and pull this thing together. We're thinking about interesting ways to experiment with content that already exists to create visibility around that, right? One of the things that TV networks are really good at that we are not is doing stuff with recycled content. And most creators create videos, they put it on YouTube, and then they forget about it, and they never do anything with it again. Well, can we create some kind of ecosystem that puts churn on that and creates visibility 6 months from now, a year from now, like surfaces some old content that's high performing and keeps it relevant? These are all interesting riddles to solve with technology in the creator space as we move forward into this next phase of, I think, what the internet's going to become. And what the internet becomes is completely dependent on us, right? If it becomes cool and amazing and productive and meaningful for creators and other people to build, and so that our kids and their kids can grow up in a world where, you know, free expression and entrepreneurship and, you know, like open markets are still around for them to take advantage of, that's on us. If it becomes this other thing where we just become silos and plug into the matrix and, you know, like the only people who can make money off this are our digital overlords, that's on us too, right? And so the war has already begun. The next war has already begun. It's not a bloody battle. It's a battle of behavior. It's a battle of like our attention. It's a battle of wallets and, you know, just things that we're going to have to make decisions at every step of the way as to what world we want to live in. And that starts at an individual level. So that's not something we can fake at scale. So anyway, that's all I got. I'm going to leave it at that. I appreciate you all for hanging with us. Damn. Okay, that went better than I thought. Anyway, I appreciate all of you for listening to me rant here for an hour. And I'm excited to see where this goes. Appreciate you all. Take care. Bye.